Chapter 1. An Unlikely Encounter. The Centauri Belt was a place of mysteries, stretching across the galaxy like a glittering scar. Its asteroid fields were treacherous but rich in resources, drawing miners, scavengers, and explorers from across the galaxy. Yet, its perils had earned it another reputation: a graveyard for ships and dreams. Floating among its vast expanse was Argus 9, a crumbling mining outpost. Once a marvel of engineering, it now served as a haven for the desperate and the forgotten. For Jonah Cade, it was both prison and sanctuary. A former pilot turned mechanic, Jonah had come to Argus 9 to escape his past a choice that left him fixing other people's messes for credits barely enough to keep him fed. Today had started like any other. Jonah stood at his workbench, tools spread out before him, a malfunctioning plasma manifold sparking intermittently as he tinkered with its fragile wiring. His cramped workshop reeked of burnt circuits and old oil, and the dim lighting flickered in time with the station's struggling life support systems. "This thing's a relic," Jonah muttered to himself, running a diagnostic. "Should have been scrapped years ago." The monotonous hum of the station was abruptly interrupted by the blaring of an alarm. Red lights flashed overhead, and the intercom crackled to life, its voice strained and panicked. "Attention! Unidentified craft entering restricted space. All personnel brace for impact." Before Jonah could react, the station shuddered violently, throwing him against the workbench. Tools clattered to the floor as the vibration rippled through Argus 9. A loud, metallic groan echoed through the corridors, followed by the screech of something scraping against the station's exterior. Jonah's heart raced as the lights flickered dangerously. "What now?" he muttered, grabbing his tool belt and a portable diagnostic scanner. Argus 9 was always one bad day away from total collapse, and he knew if the damage wasn't addressed quickly, the entire station could vent into the void. A crash landing. Jonah made his way to the docking bay, weaving through narrow corridors filled with debris from the impact. Smoke and sparks erupted from damaged panels, the station groaning under the strain. By the time he reached the bay, the situation was worse than he expected. A sleek alien craft A design he didn't recognize was lodged awkwardly in one of the station's docking ports. Its hull was scorched and dented, suggesting it had barely survived whatever had brought it here. The ship's unusual metallic sheen shimmered even under the harsh emergency lights, its contours smooth and organic, unlike any human vessel Jonah had seen. "Great," he muttered, surveying the damage. "This is going to be a nightmare to fix." As he approached the craft, a faint hiss drew his attention. The ship's airlock had begun to open, steam venting into the cold bay. Jonah instinctively reached for his sidearm, a rusty plasma pistol he kept for emergencies. He wasn't sure what to expect: pirates, smugglers, or worse, but he wasn't about to take chances. The airlock opened fully with a soft whoosh, revealing a single figure stumbling out. Jonah blinked, lowering his weapon slightly. It was a woman or something close to it. The alien girl. She was unlike anything Jonah had ever seen. Her skin, a soft, pearlescent blue, shimmered faintly, as though catching and reflecting light in a way that seemed almost magical. Her hair, silvery and flowing, framed a face that was strikingly beautiful yet unmistakably alien, with large, glowing eyes that shifted colors like a nebula. She wore a strange, form-fitting suit that pulsed faintly, as though alive. The woman staggered, her movements unsteady. Jonah took a cautious step forward, his instincts torn between offering help and running for cover. Before he could decide, she collapsed to her knees, her voice barely a whisper. "Help," she managed before crumpling to the floor. Jonah hesitated only a moment before rushing to her side. Up close, she looked fragile, her breathing shallow and labored. Her suit flickered faintly, its glow dimming as though it, too, was struggling. "Hey, can you hear me?" Jonah said, shaking her shoulder gently. "What happened? Are you injured?" Her glowing eyes flickered open, meeting his. "The shard. Inside me," she said, her voice soft but urgent. "They're coming." "Shard? Inside you?" Jonah repeated, baffled. What does that even mean? But she didn't answer. Her eyes fluttered shut, her body going limp. Jonah cursed under his breath. Whatever trouble she was in, it was now his problem. A new problem. Jonah lifted her carefully, surprised at how light she was. Her suit felt warm to the touch, almost like skin. As he carried her toward the station's medical bay, the intercom crackled again, this time with a different voice. Attention, Argus 9. This is the Dominion vessel Nemesis. Surrender the occupant of the alien craft immediately, or prepare to be boarded. Jonah's blood ran cold. The Dominion, a ruthless galactic empire known for its aggressive expansion and brutal tactics, had no reason to be here unless they were after the alien woman. Perfect, Jonah muttered. Of course, it's the Dominion. He quickened his pace, his mind racing. He didn't know who this woman was or what she carried, but if the Dominion wanted her, it couldn't be good. The question was, what the hell was he supposed to do now? The Shard's warning. The medical bay was a small, poorly equipped room Jonah rarely used, but it would have to do. He laid the alien woman on the examination table, hooking her up to a portable diagnostic scanner. The results were baffling. Her biology was unlike anything in the database, but one thing was clear: her condition was deteriorating. Okay, think Jonah, he muttered to himself. She mentioned a shard. Something inside her. What did she mean? As if in response, the woman stirred, her glowing eyes opening once more. The shard. It's a key, she said weakly. Inside me. It's alive. Jonah stared at her, his confusion deepening. A key to what? To the core, she whispered. You have to protect it. Don't let them take it. Before Jonah could ask more, the station shuddered violently. The Dominion ship had begun its assault, firing on Argus 9's already fragile defenses. The lights flickered, and the intercom blared with static-filled warnings. Damn it, Jonah said, grabbing his pistol. He turned to the woman. Stay here. I'll handle this. No, she said, her voice stronger than before. Take me with you. The shard. It bonds. You'll need me. Jonah shook his head, overwhelmed. Wait, bonds? What does that mean? She managed a faint smile, her glowing eyes locking onto his. You'll see. A fateful decision. The station groaned under the assault, and Jonah knew time was running out. Whatever the shard was, and whatever the Dominion wanted with it, he had no choice but to trust her for now. All right, he said, helping her to her feet. But you'd better explain everything once we're out of here. As they made their way toward the docking bay, the station shook violently, debris falling around them. Dominion soldiers had already breached the outer corridors, their heavy boots echoing ominously. Jonah glanced at the alien woman. You better have some tricks up your sleeve. She looked at him, her faint smile returning. I think you'll find the shard. Quite persuasive. Jonah groaned. That doesn't even make sense. But before he could argue further, a group of Dominion soldiers appeared ahead, weapons raised. Jonah tightened his grip on his pistol, preparing for a fight. Beside him, the alien woman's skin began to glow brighter, her suit pulsing with energy. And then, everything changed. Chapter 2. The Shard Awakens. The Dominion soldiers advanced with military precision, their black armor gleaming under the flickering lights of Argus 9's crumbling corridors. Jonah Cade gripped his plasma pistol tightly, his pulse racing. Beside him, the alien woman, still weak, but glowing faintly, seemed oddly calm. Stay behind me, Jonah muttered, eyeing the soldiers as they raised their weapons. No, she replied, her voice quiet but firm. Trust me. Before Jonah could argue, her skin brightened, and the faint hum he'd noticed earlier became louder, resonating through the corridor. The soldiers hesitated, their weapons trembling slightly as though reacting to some unseen force. Jonah glanced at her in confusion. What the hell are you doing? He asked. The shard, she said, her silver-violet eyes locking onto his. It's reacting to them. A sudden shift. The lead Dominion soldier shouted something, his voice distorted through his helmet. He raised his weapon, but before he could fire, a burst of energy erupted from the alien woman. The corridor filled with a blinding white light, forcing Jonah to shield his eyes. When the light faded, the soldiers were on the ground, their weapons sparking and their armor cracked. Jonah stared, his jaw slack. What was that? She swayed, clearly drained by the effort, but she managed a faint smile. The shard. It's alive. and it protects. Jonah helped her steady herself. Okay, you're going to need to explain this shard thing fast. What's inside you? And why are they willing to tear this station apart to get it? She hesitated, her gaze dropping. The shard is a piece of an ancient artifact, the Ecliptus core. My people were its guardians for millennia, ensuring it stayed hidden. But the Dominion discovered its existence and attacked us. They destroyed my world to claim it. Jonah frowned. And now it's inside you? She nodded. The core was shattered to protect it. Each shard was entrusted to a guardian. I carry one of the fragments. And its power. Jonah rubbed his temples, trying to process the information. So let me get this straight. You've got a piece of some galaxy-changing artifact inside you. The Dominion wants it, and now I'm stuck in the middle of this mess? Yes, she said simply. But you're not stuck. You're part of it now. Jonah groaned. Of course I am. A desperate escape. The sound of boots echoed from the corridor ahead. More Dominion soldiers were closing in. Jonah cursed under his breath. We need to move. Can you walk? I'll manage, she said, though her glow dimmed slightly. Jonah led her through the twisting passages of Argus 9, his mind racing. The station was falling apart under the Dominion assault, and the docking bay was their only chance of escape. He activated his comm unit, calling Krell Thorne, the only smuggler he knew crazy enough to help. Krell, you better not have skipped town. Jonah barked into the comm. The line crackled before Krell's gravelly voice came through. What did you do this time, Cade? No time to explain, Jonah said. Get to Dock 6. We're coming in hot. Krell sighed. You owe me for this. Add it to my tab, Jonah replied, cutting the comm. The shard's power. As they neared the docking bay, the alien woman whom Jonah now realized he still didn't know the name of stumbled, her glow fading further. Jonah caught her, his frustration mixing with concern. You can't keep pushing yourself like this, he said. We're almost there. I don't have a choice, she said, her voice faint. The shard is bonding. Wait, what? Jonah asked, his grip tightening on her arm. What does that mean? Before she could answer, the station shuddered violently, and the floor beneath them cracked. A massive explosion tore through the corridor behind them, sending debris flying. Jonah shielded her with his body as a shockwave knocked them both to the ground. When the dust settled, he groaned, pushing himself up. Are you okay? She nodded weakly, but her expression was troubled. The shard is reacting to you. To me? Jonah asked, incredulous. What the hell does that mean? It means it's chosen you, she said, her glowing eyes meeting his. You're part of this now, whether you want to be or not. Into the fire. They reached Dock 6 just as the Dominion's heavy troops breached the station's outer defenses. Krell's freighter, the Black Razor, loomed in the bay, its engines roaring to life. The smugglers stood at the top of the ramp, waving frantically. Move your asses, Krell shouted, firing a few shots at the advancing Dominion soldiers. Jonah and the alien woman sprinted toward the ship, plasma bolts whizzing past them. Jonah fired over his shoulder, covering their retreat. But the Dominion's numbers were overwhelming. Just as they reached the ramp, a squad of soldiers appeared, blocking their path. Jonah raised his pistol, but before he could fire, the alien woman stepped forward. Her skin glowed brighter than ever, and the shard's hum grew into a deafening roar. Get down, she shouted. Jonah and Krell dove for cover as another burst of energy erupted from her. The soldiers were thrown back like ragdolls, their armor disintegrating in the radiant blast. When the light faded, the corridor was empty, and the Dominion forces were nowhere to be seen. Jonah stared at her, his chest heaving. You're full of surprises, aren't you? She managed a faint smile before collapsing into his arms. I told you, the shard is alive. A new journey. The Black Razor lifted off, its thrusters shaking the docking bay as it shot into the void. Krell piloted the ship with practiced ease, weaving through the Dominion blockade. Jonah carried the alien woman to the medbay, laying her gently on a cot. You're safe now, he said, though he wasn't sure if it was true. She opened her eyes, her glow faint but steady. Thank you, Jonah. For what? He asked, sinking into a nearby chair. For believing in me, she said. And for what's to come. Jonah frowned. What's to come? The shard, she said, her voice barely a whisper. It's more than a weapon. It's a guide. And it's chosen you. Jonah sat back, his mind racing. He had no idea what the shard was capable of or why it had chosen him, but one thing was clear. His life would never be the same. As the black razor disappeared into hyperspace, Jonah felt a strange warmth radiating from the shard within her. It wasn't just power, it was destiny. Chapter 3. The Shard's Legacy. The black razor hurtled through hyperspace, its hull shimmering faintly as the ship escaped the Dominion's grasp. In the medbay, Jonah Cade leaned back in his chair, staring at the faintly glowing figure resting on the cot. The alien woman's light pulsed gently, but her energy remained low. Jonah's mind buzzed with unanswered questions. She had said the shard had chosen him. What did that even mean? And why did the Dominion want it so badly? The door hissed open, and Krell Thorne stepped in, his 4 arms carrying a tray of food and a toolkit. The rugged smuggler eyed Jonah and the woman with a mix of curiosity and frustration. So, Krell began, setting the tray down. Mind telling me why I just risked my neck to save some glowing stranger and her pet mechanic? Jonah glared at him. She's not a stranger. Well, I don't know exactly what she is, but she's important. Krell raised an eyebrow. Important enough to get the Dominion breathing down our necks? Yes, the woman said weakly, her voice drawing both men's attention. She sat up slowly, her translucent wings twitching slightly. Thank you, Krell Thorne. Your bravery is appreciated. Krell snorted. Bravery? Try desperation. But you're welcome, I guess. Now, care to explain what all the fuss is about? The shard's revelation. The woman looked to Jonah, her silver-violet eyes meeting his. You deserve the truth. Both of you. She extended a hand, and a soft glow emanated from her palm. Jonah and Krell watched as the light coalesced into a 3-dimensional projection of a crystalline structure. The artifact seemed to pulse with life, its facets shifting and refracting light in impossible ways. This is the Ecliptus core, she began. A creation of an ancient race, long gone from the galaxy. It was said to hold the power to reshape reality, itself a tool of unimaginable potential and unimaginable danger. Krell whistled softly. That explains why the Dominion wants it. The woman nodded. When the Dominion discovered its existence, they sought to use it as a weapon. To stop them, the core's guardians shattered it into shards, scattering them across the galaxy. I am one of the last guardians, and I carry one of those shards. Jonah leaned forward, his brow furrowed. And now the shard is bonding with me? She nodded again, her expression grave. The shard senses a kindred spirit. It seeks a host who can wield its power and protect it. You, Jonah Cade, have been chosen. A price to pay. Jonah ran a hand through his hair, his frustration bubbling over. Chosen? I didn't sign up for this. I'm just a mechanic. What makes me so special? The woman's gaze softened. The shard does not choose lightly. It sees courage, resilience, and a willingness to fight for others. You've already proven that by saving me. Krell chuckled. Guess you're the galaxy's new hero, Jonah. Congrats. Shut up, Krell, Jonah snapped, but his mind was racing. He didn't feel like a hero. He felt like a man who had stumbled into something far bigger than himself. As if sensing his turmoil, the woman reached out, her glowing hand brushing his arm. The shard's power is not without cost. It will test you, push you beyond your limits. But if you accept it, you will become something greater. Jonah stared at her, the weight of her words sinking in. And if I don't? Then the shard will remain dormant, she said. But the Dominion will never stop hunting us. Without the shard's protection, we won't survive. A vision of the past. Before Jonah could respond, the shard inside the woman pulsed brightly. A wave of energy rippled through the room, and Jonah's vision blurred. He felt himself pulled into a strange, otherworldly realm, a place of shimmering light and endless stars. He stood on a vast, crystalline plain, the Ecliptus core hovering before him. Its glow was overwhelming, its energy resonating in his chest. As he reached out to touch it, images flooded his mind. He saw a mighty civilization, its people radiant and powerful, using the core to build wonders beyond imagination. He saw their downfall, brought about by their own hubris. And he saw the core's fragments scattered across the galaxy, entrusted to guardians like the woman he had saved. The vision shifted, showing him the Dominion's ruthless march across the stars. Their ships burned planets, their soldiers enslaved entire species, all in pursuit of the core's power. Finally, he saw himself, standing before the shard. Its light enveloped him, filling him with both fear and hope. The bond. Jonah gasped as the vision ended, collapsing back into the medbay chair. The woman caught him, her touch steady despite her weakened state. "You've seen what's at stake," she said softly. "The shard chose you because it believes you can stop them." Jonah rubbed his temples, his thoughts spinning. He didn't want to be a hero, but he couldn't ignore what he had seen. The Dominion wouldn't stop until they had the core, and countless lives would be lost if they succeeded. "Fine," he said finally, his voice tinged with resignation. "I'll do it. I'll protect the shard." The woman smiled, her glow brightening. "Thank you, Jonah Cade. Together, we can make a difference." The Dominion strikes back. Their moment of resolve was interrupted by the ship's proximity alarms. Krell bolted to the cockpit, cursing under his breath. "We've got company." Dominion interceptors, 3 of them, closing fast. Jonah helped the woman to her feet, her energy stabilizing as the shard inside her pulsed with renewed strength. "Looks like it's time to see what this shard can really do. Get to the turret," Krell shouted as the black razor lurched into evasive maneuvers. "And try not to get us killed." Jonah sprinted to the ship's turret, strapping himself in as the targeting system came online. The Dominion ships were sleek and deadly, their plasma cannons lighting up the void as they closed in. "Let's see how you like this," Jonah muttered, firing a volley of plasma bolts. One of the interceptors exploded in a burst of fire, but the remaining 2 pressed the attack. In the medbay, the woman placed her hand on the ship's console. Her glow intensified, and the shard's energy flowed into the black razor. The ship's engines roared, its shields flaring with newfound strength. Krell's voice crackled over the comm. "Whatever you're doing, keep doing it. We're outrunning them." A narrow escape. With the shard's power enhancing the ship, the black razor outmaneuvered the Dominion interceptors, slipping into a nearby asteroid field. The pursuing ships were less fortunate, colliding with the massive rocks as they tried to follow. When the razor finally emerged from the field, hyperspace coordinates locked in. Jonah slumped in the turret, his heart pounding. "We're clear," Krell announced over the comm, "for now." Jonah made his way back to the medbay, where the alien woman sat, her glow soft but steady. "That shard of yours packs a punch," he said, his tone light despite his exhaustion. "It's only the beginning," she replied. "The shard's full power is still untapped, and we'll need it for what's to come." Jonah nodded, his resolve hardening. The Dominion wouldn't stop, but neither would he. For the first time, he felt like he had a purpose, a fight worth fighting. As the black razor disappeared into hyperspace, Jonah couldn't help but wonder what the shard had in store for him, and whether he was ready to face it. Chapter 4. The Final Stand. The black razor emerged from hyperspace into a swirling nebula, its vivid hues of blue and green contrasting sharply against the darkness of space. Inside the ship, the atmosphere was tense. Jonah Cade stood in the cockpit alongside Krell Thorne and the alien woman, now more luminous and resolute than ever. The shard's presence within her pulsed like a heartbeat, filling the cabin with a faint hum of energy. "This is it," Krell muttered, his 4 hands deftly adjusting the ship's controls. "We're in Dominion territory now. If they catch us, we're done." Jonah stared at the display, which showed a massive structure hidden deep within the nebula. The Dominion Spire, a heavily fortified space station, loomed ahead. It was a grim monolith, its spires bristling with weapons and its docking bays teeming with enemy ships. "And that's where they're keeping the other shards?" Jonah asked, his voice low. The alien woman nodded. "Yes, the Dominion has captured 2 of the fragments. If they unite them, their power will rival the full core." Jonah's jaw tightened. He hadn't asked for this mission, but now the stakes were clear. Stop the Dominion, or watch the galaxy fall into their grasp. The plan. In the Razor's briefing room, the trio went over their strategy one last time. The woman stood at the center of the table, projecting a glowing map of the Dominion spire. The shards are housed in the core vault, located in the station's central tower, she explained. The vault is heavily shielded, but the shard within me can disable its defenses for a short time. And then what? Krell asked, crossing his arms. We waltz in, grab the shards, and walk out before they blast us to pieces? The woman smiled faintly. Not quite. The vault's defenses will take time to breach. While I disable them, Jonah must retrieve the shards. Krell, your job is to keep the razor ready for a fast extraction. Jonah glanced at the hologram, his stomach nodding. What about Dominion forces? They're not just going to let us walk in. They'll come, the woman admitted. But the shard's power will protect us. At least, for a time. Jonah sighed. Great. No pressure. The infiltration. The Black Razor approached the Dominion spire under the cover of the nebula's dense gases. Krell activated the ship's cloaking device, rendering them invisible to most scans. As they neared one of the station's auxiliary docking bays, Jonah and the woman prepared to board. Jonah strapped on a modified combat suit, its reinforced plating a patchwork of scavenged materials. His plasma rifle rested against his shoulder, and a utility belt bristled with tools and grenades. The woman, in contrast, carried no weapons. Her glow had intensified, the shard's energy radiating from her like an aura. She seemed calm, but Jonah could see the tension in her eyes. Hey, he said, placing a hand on her shoulder. We'll get through this. She met his gaze, her expression softening. Thank you, Jonah, for believing in me. The ship docked with a soft hiss, and the airlock opened into the cold, metallic corridors of the Dominion spire. The station's ominous hum filled the air, a constant reminder of the danger they faced. Stick close, Jonah whispered, leading the way. Through enemy lines. The corridors were eerily quiet, their harsh lighting casting long shadows. Jonah and the woman moved quickly but carefully, avoiding patrols and security cameras. Krell's voice crackled over their comms, providing updates from the Razor. 2 squads heading toward your position, he warned. Better pick up the pace. They reached a control room overlooking the core vault. Through the reinforced glass, Jonah could see the shard's 2 crystalline fragments pulsing with light, their energy contained within a glowing sphere of containment fields. That's them, the woman said, her voice filled with awe and determination. She placed her hand on a nearby console, and the shard within her began to glow brighter. As she worked to disable the vault's defenses, alarms blared, and red lights flashed. They've detected us. Krell shouted over the comm. You've got incoming lots of it. The battle. The Dominion's forces descended on their position like a tidal wave. Jonah held the line, his plasma rifle blazing as soldiers in black armor stormed the control room. Each shot was precise, but the sheer number of enemies was overwhelming. The woman stood in the center of the room, her glow intensifying as she focused on the vault. The shard's energy spread through the station, disrupting its systems and causing the lights to flicker. I'm almost there, she shouted, her voice strained. Keep them back. Jonah gritted his teeth, firing another burst that took down 2 soldiers. He tossed a grenade into the hallway, its explosion sending the remaining enemies scattering. But more were coming, their footsteps echoing ominously. You better hurry, Jonah yelled. The woman's eyes snapped open, her entire body radiating light. It's done. The vault is open. Retrieving the shards, Jonah sprinted into the vault, the containment fields around the shards flickering and dying. The shards floated in midair, their crystalline surfaces pulsing with energy. As he reached for them, a surge of warmth coursed through his body. The shards seemed to resonate with the one inside the woman, their energy merging in a brilliant display of light. Jonah felt their power, overwhelming yet oddly comforting. I've got them, he shouted, turning back toward the control room. But as he emerged, his heart sank. The woman was on her knees, her glow dimming. Standing over her was a towering Dominion officer, his black armor adorned with crimson insignias. He held a blade crackling with energy, its tip pointed at her throat. Drop the shards, the officer growled, his voice cold and mechanical. Jonah hesitated, his grip tightening on the fragments. Let her go. The officer sneered. You don't understand what you're holding, do you? Those shards are the key to a new galaxy. One ruled by order, by strength. Jonah raised his plasma rifle. And by you? The officer laughed. Drop the shards or she dies. The shard's true power. Before Jonah could respond, the woman's voice cut through the tension. Jonah, trust the shard. Her eyes met his, filled with determination. The shard within her pulsed faintly, as if calling to its counterparts. Jonah felt the resonance, the fragments in his hands growing warm. With a deep breath, he closed his eyes and let the shard's energy flow through him. A blinding light filled the room as the shards merged, their power surging into Jonah. When he opened his eyes, his body glowed with the same ethereal light as the woman's. The Dominion officer lunged, but Jonah moved faster. He raised his hand, and a wave of energy erupted from his palm, throwing the officer across the room. The blade clattered to the floor, its energy extinguished. The remaining Dominion soldiers fled, overwhelmed by the display of power. Jonah knelt beside the woman, her glow slowly returning. You did it, she said weakly. We did it, Jonah replied. A new beginning. Back aboard the Black Razor, Jonah and the woman stood in the cargo bay, the shards now safely contained in a protective sphere. Krell leaned against the wall, his arms crossed. So, the smuggler said, what now? Jonah glanced at the woman. We take the shards somewhere safe. Somewhere the Dominion can't reach them. She nodded. There is a place. A sanctuary where the core's fragments can be reunited. Jonah took a deep breath, the weight of their journey settling on him. The fight wasn't over, but for the first time, he felt ready to face what lay ahead. As the Black Razor disappeared into hyperspace, Jonah couldn't help but smile. He wasn't just a mechanic anymore. He was something more, something the galaxy desperately needed.